Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. For those that need ASL interpretations, our interpreters today are Beth Zurif and Craig Ridgway. In the chat, we'll provide instructions on how to pin their videos. We'll also include a CART services link for you to follow along as well.
Thank you, Yahira, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March meeting of the Civilian Complaint Review Board. I'm Fred Davey, and I am the chair of the board. And before I get started, I would like for my fellow board members to introduce themselves. Why don't I start with Ms. Irish?
Hi, everyone. My name is Corrine Irish. I am a mayoral appointee. I live in Harlem.
Mr. Rivadeneira.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Michael Rivadeneira. I am the City Council Bronx appointee to the board, and I hail from the Bronx.
Mr. Puma.
Good evening, everyone. It's Joseph Puma. I'm a City Council representative to the board, hailing from Manhattan, and a lifelong NYC resident.
Mr. Dwyer.
Frank Dwyer. I'm Frank Dwyer, Brooklyn born and raised, Queens resident, and I am a police commissioner designate.
Ms. Bond.
Good evening, all. I'm Erica Bond. I'm a mayoral appointee and a Brooklynite.
Mr. Joseph.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nathan Joseph. I am a City Council designee, and I live in Staten Island.
Mr. Freeman.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Willie Freeman. I'm a police department designee.
Thank you. Did I get everybody who's here? Did I miss anyone? All right. Thank you all. Before we proceed with comments tonight, we just have a little bit of housekeeping to do. We need to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any changes or amendments, addendums, subtractions? Hearing none, all those in favor of the minutes, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, no. All right, the minutes are approved. I want to begin tonight by acknowledging all those New Yorkers who have been lost to COVID-19 and those who have lost someone to the virus. We are a year into this immense crisis, and we know that many, many people out there are hurting. Even when we were removed, even when we are recovered, many still will continue to hurt. Some are hurting, some were hurting even before this pandemic began. That means we must do everything we can to make New York City better than what it was before, from jobs and the economy to education, public housing, and yes, even policing and civilian oversight. The city is tackling these issues head on, and I am encouraged by many of the plans and proposals put forth by the mayor in his Dinkins plan, in his draft response to the governor's executive order, and by the city council. One piece of the mayor's plan that I am particularly excited about is the administration's support for changing state law to broaden the CCRB's access to sealed records. While we have made significant progress with the NYPD in several key areas, the department often rejects our requests for evidence and police work and paperwork, including video and prisoner logs, if that evidence contains information that the department feels could be sealed or kept confidential due to ongoing or completed criminal proceedings. This is problematic because police misconduct is often a reason why arrests end up sealed in the first place. If our agency is denied access to critical information because of the department's interpretation of sealing statutes, that negatively impacts the CCRB's ability to fairly and thoroughly decide cases. The intent of this sealing law was to protect the privacy of civilians, something the CCRB deeply values and strives to protect. However, the sealing statute should not have the effect of shielding officers from scrutiny or misconduct. I am glad the administration is advocating for this change. The other proposal I strongly support is the City Council's resolution calling on the state legislature to give the CCRB final disciplinary authority in CCRB cases. The bill, sponsored by Assemblymember Cruz and Senator Bailey, will turn this idea into reality. I believe this will give the CCRB the teeth it needs to bring greater accountability to the NYPD. Making CCRB's oversight even more independent from the department, from complaint to penalty, will only improve the public's trust in the disciplinary system and repair the fractured relationship between community and police. These are simple, common sense solutions that the state could take to empower civilian oversight in New York. These changes could serve as an example to other jurisdictions across the country that are paying close attention to how we reshape the nation's largest police force. As we continue to pursue these changes, it is also important for us to reflect and receive feedback on the changes we are already putting into place. Last week, the CCRB released its officer history database, the first of its kind in our state and the nation. This effort was made possible by the repeal of 50A last summer and the court's validation of CCRB's ability to release these records. CCRB staff will speak more about this tonight, but I want to take this opportunity to thank all who worked tirelessly advocating for the repeal of 50A. I also want to thank Lincoln McVeigh, our Director of Analytics and New Application Development, and his entire team for working on CCRB's database for weeks and months at a time, and for pulling data for these meetings and for members of the public. This new day of transparency could not have happened without all of you in and outside of the CCRB. This city should be extremely grateful for all of your efforts, and I hope we will be, not only during this period, but in years to come. I'd now like to turn this meeting over to the CCRB Executive Director, John Dosh. John.
Thank you, Chair Davey. As the Chair said, the database is now live. We're already receiving feedback on how to improve it, and we're looking forward to releasing more information through FOIL and proactively in the database. I'm extremely proud of the agency and the work the entire staff does every day that leads to this data collection. The Chair already mentioned Lincoln and his team, but I'm also grateful to the folks that do it, from Commissioner Tisch all the way down the roster, for the assistance they gave the agency on this matter, frankly, throughout the pandemic. The agency and the city are in their debt. In addition to discussing specifics about policing in Staten Island tonight, the agency will also present on the new database. I just wanted to give you all a few quick updates on agency operations. Investigators are still working remotely, and the CCRB is prioritizing the health and safety of staff, civilians, and members of service. We've also recently created a social media canvassing policy. A number of our investigations still require more information. And please check our social media if you have information on incidents involving police misconduct. The CCRB is implementing the disciplinary matrix into our internal complaint tracking system, and board panels will soon begin using the matrix when assessing complaints. That process has already started, but it will go much smoother once we've assimilated the matrix into the case tracking system. Some ground rules for tonight. When we get to the public comment portion of the meeting, please use the raise the hand feature to make a comment, and please keep your comments to 2 minutes. Thank you again to staff, and thanks again to members of the public for participating.
Thank you, John. We will now have a presentation from our Deputy Director for Outreach and Intergovernmental Affairs, Jahai Rose. Jahai.
Okay, thank you very much. Can everyone hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Jahai.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair Davey. I've also added a copy of the outreach presentation into the chat so everyone could follow along. Let me share my screen. Okay, as you all may know, the Civilian Complaint Review Board is in fact the largest independent oversight entity of the largest New York City, of the largest police department in the country, in the nation. The CCRB investigates, mediates, and prosecutes complaints of misconduct against police officers. You've met a few board members, but the agency is governed by a 15-member board. 5 seats are appointed by the mayor, 5 are appointed by the New York City Council, 3 designated by the police commissioner, 1 appointed by the public advocate, and the chair is jointly appointed by the city council and the mayor's office. The CCRB is allowed to intake complaints about police misconduct. However, we have a very specific jurisdiction. We use an acronym called FATO to remember it. The F stands for force, A stands for abuse of authority, D stands for discourtesy, and O stands for offensive language. Now, just to give you a little bit of information regarding the Right to Know Act. The Right to Know Act is a law that was passed in 2018 in the month of October. That law pertains to police encounters. With those police encounters, under certain circumstances, police officers should identify themselves, providing their name, other information such as their rank, command, and shield number. Additionally, and with some exceptions, they should explain the purpose of the interaction. Additionally, inform an individual of their right to say no when asked for their consent to search their person, property, vehicle, or home. And lastly, offer a business card with the officer's information that explains how a comment and or complaint can be made about the interaction with the NYPD. Civilians can request a business card in all interactions. This is what the business card may look like, the front and back. Now, there are many ways to file complaints about police misconduct. Just to name a few, you can file one of these reports online at nyc.gov/CCRB complaint. You can also call our hotline at 1-800-341-CCRB. Now, remember, if you see footage of misconduct on social media or in the news, you can file a complaint even if you are not there in person. The other ways to file a complaint to the CCRB include contacting 311. You could also come to our office at 100 Church Street on the 10th floor in Manhattan, New York, zip code 10007. You could also send the CCRB a complaint via mail at the same address, 100 Church Street. Now, we would like to provide you with some information regarding our investigations unit. The CCRB's investigators, level 1, are responsible for investigating civilian complaints against NYPD, against the NYPD alleging police misconduct. A large part of their career opportunities include extensive writing, interviewing witnesses and police panel, researching, juggling competitive priorities, working independently, and drafting compelling closing reports. Our investigative staff is comprised of more than 90+ investigators with various socioeconomic backgrounds, and they speak 10+ languages. Our team is comprised of the best and brightest undergrad and graduate students and from various educational institutions nationwide. To learn more about our investigative unit, please visit our official website at nyc.gov/CCRB. There are a couple of ways for you to apply to be a part of the investigative unit. The CCRB has an ongoing commitment to hire investigators in this role. They can be viewed on Idealist, www.idealist.org, and Handshake, which is www.joinhandshake.com. Alternatively, if you don't see these roles posted, you are encouraged to submit a cover letter and resume via email at careers@ccrb.nyc.gov for future interest. Now, if you would like an outreach presentation for organizations, members of your community, feel free to reach out to outreach@ccrb.nyc.gov. Feel free to send us an email, and you can also follow the CCRB on social media on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Jahai. Let me just see if any of the board members have any questions for Jahai. And I can't see all of you, so if you do, please just unmute yourself and ask a question. Any questions for Jahai? All right, thanks again, Jahai. Much appreciated. We are scheduled to have a presentation from our acting senior counsel to the executive director and the director of policy and advocacy, Haria Tarakan, but I understand she may be having technical issues. Is that right, Hira? Are those technical issues still there?
Yes, we can circle back in just a moment while she's sorting that out.
Okay, well, let's go to community comment, and would you invite any guests we have here, Hira, to speak?
Thank you, Chair. So first we'll be hearing from Assemblymember Charles Fall's office, Ruben Sibri.
Look, it's really on it right now. Look, it's an 1880 background.
Mr. Sibri, the floor is yours. So, Your Highness, should we go to our next speaker and come back
Yeah,
to Ruben?
Yeah, we'll circle back with Ruben. Next, we'll be hearing from Kevin Cruz.
Hello?
Yes, how are you?
How's everybody doing tonight?
Doing well, please go ahead.
So I was supposed to pick out of the 3 questions, correct?
The floor is yours, and you can proceed as you wish.
To be quite honest with you guys right now, I'm actually in the middle of driving. So I just honestly wasn't too prepared because I had a lot going on, but I was honestly hoping for some questions that I could answer.
Well, why don't we have you speak to the board at another time when you are better situated? How's that sound?
That's perfect, sir. I appreciate that.
Sure, absolutely. Yahira, is there another speaker?
We've sorted out the issue with Haria's presentation. So Soren, can you upgrade Haria?
Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. And thank you, Soren. I am going to share my screen and start my presentation. Great. So we wanted to give you all a snapshot of the data we have from Staten Island. The way that CCRB collects our data and our outreach team specifically targets areas for doing outreach and making sure the community knows about us is a little bit imperfect, but the best that we have, which is that we use arrest data to see where there is police activity. And so you will see here the 4 precincts that fall in Staten Island and how many arrests there were per 10,000. And they correlate with the complaints that we received in 2019. So as you see, we've received more complaints in 2019 than we did in 2018. We have been out in the, even during COVID, doing presentations virtually and making sure the community knows about us. The rest of the data is from 2020 because we used our own data, and so it's more up to date. But as you can see, we had 2 cases that were mediated, 14 cases that were closed other, but the important numbers here are 46 full investigations and 76 truncated cases. We're always trying to lower the number of cases that are truncated by making sure that people who file complaints with us know exactly how to go through the process, are supported while they go through the process, and are able to get what they need. And this is something that the agency works on every year. For fully investigated cases, each case that we get can have several allegations. But this is for our complaints. You can see that out of the complaints that we received, 32% of them were substantiated, which means that we found that misconduct did occur, and the board recommended some sort of discipline. 8 cases were exonerated, where misconduct was found not to occur because it was within police guidelines. 5 unfounded, where we found that what was alleged did not occur at all. 4 officers unidentified. And finally, 14 cases where we weren't able to determine with the preponderance of the evidence whether misconduct occurred or not. Like I said, each complaint can have several allegations. So you will see that in the 15 substantiated complaints, there were actually 66 substantiated allegations of misconduct. And 73 were exonerated, 30 unfounded, 36 officer unidentified, and 78 unsubstantiated. Finally, I want to take some time to go over how our database works and show an example of how to use it. So when you click over to our database, which is in the chat, you will see a web page like this. When you scroll down, this is where you can put in the fields that you want to search. I have just picked the 121st precinct because that's in Staten Island, and I want to look at officers with at least one substantiated complaint. And it pulls up a list for me of the officers, tells me what command they're in. I picked the 121st precinct, so this will be officers in the 121st precinct, their last name, their first name, rank, and their shield numbers. Now, if I want to see any more information, I just click on one of the rows, and I will see that this officer, Joseph Paolo, has 5 total complaints and 1 substantiated complaint. If I want any further information, I click on detail, and that will show me that he has, here is his substantiated complaint. You will see that there were 2 separate allegations, one for abuse of authority, forcible removal to the hospital, and one for the use of physical force. The board substantiated both of those and recommended training. And the NYPD also imposed training. However, you will see that the officer also has 7 total complaints, with 5 of them resulting in that were not substantiated. So 1 is pending litigation, and 1 alleged victim was uncooperative, 1 was exonerated, 1 was unfounded, and again, another one, the complainant was uncooperative. And then I can go back to main, which will send me back to my original search, but I can change that to see complaint officers with 2 substantiated complaints. I can change that to see officers in the 122nd precinct. Or if I know a specific officer, I can look them up by their first name or last name. I can look up officers by rank or by shield number. So it's a really interactive tool. We encourage the public to use it, look around and see how best to use it. And like John mentioned earlier, if there is information on here that is not on here, our FOIL office, although small, is mighty, and we look forward to being able to respond to our FOIL requests as they come in. I just want to share a few additional resources. We do share a lot of other data on our website as well. And that looks at, we'll show you maps of our complaints, a lot more information that's not just about officer history, but where our complaints come from, the demographics of our complainants, etc. And then from the policy unit, we publish reports, both annual and semi-annual, but also issue-based reports, and those are up on the website as well. Finally, if you have a complaint and want to track it, you can go to nyc.gov/CCRB complaints. Thank you so much. And I'm here if you have any questions.
Thank you, Haria. Questions for Haria, board members? All right. Hearing none, we thank you for the presentation, and we hope that the public will make good use of the database. Thank you. So, Yahira, should we go back to public comment?
Yes. Next, we'll be hearing from Vernon Diverse Wooten. He's a senior case manager at United Activities Unlimited in the Fatherhood Matters program.
Right. The speaker can go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, please go ahead.
Good evening and thanks for having me. I had a question if that's okay.
Sure.
After looking at the young lady's presentation, my question became, what is the criteria for cases that are founded and unfounded and unsubstantiated? Like, what is the measurement to determine that? Is it a matter of access to information? Is it a matter of follow through from the person complaining? Like, what's, I just want to know what is the determining factor.
Sure. So for substantiated cases, it means that we looked at the evidence and there was a preponderance of the evidence that suggested that the action that was complained about did actually happen and that it did violate policy of law. For unsubstantiated allegations, it means that looking at a preponderance of the evidence, there was not enough evidence to decide one way or the other about whether or not the action happened at all. Exonerated means that we looked at a preponderance of the evidence, the action did happen, but it was not a violation of either the patrol guide or the law. And then unfounded means that we looked at the evidence and the action didn't happen at all.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that, and I understand that clearly. And based on what you just explained to me, which lends itself to my question, is when it comes to unsubstantiated cases, and you said that's based on not having the preponderance of evidence to make that determination. Is that impacted by the same thing you mentioned earlier about police access to information? Is that impacted by that, unsubstantiated cases?
It could be impacted by any number of things, and it perhaps could be impacted by sealed evidence. I don't know the number of cases that actually are impacted by sealed evidence that we can't get access to. I think we could talk about that at a future date. But more likely than not, it just means that the evidence that we were able to gather at the time, and then I'll ask our executive director or any other staff to speak to this, but more likely than not, or board members if they want, but more likely than not, it just means that the evidence that we looked at was not sufficient enough, there was not a preponderance that allow us to make a determination one way or the other on a complaint. John, do you want to talk to this or any other board members?
So when we're determining whether to substantiate or unsubstantiate an allegation, the evidence that is generally looked at are the statements given by the civilian, the statements given by police officers, police officer paperwork, body-worn camera footage, other videos, often cell phone video or surveillance video, and medical records, and also statements from witnesses who might not be complainants or victims, but just other civilian witnesses we're able to find and speak with about the incident. So when those are the types of evidence that the board looks at when it's trying to determine whether or not to substantiate an allegation. And there are cases, as the chair said, I don't have the statistics in front of me, where not having access to sealed information can impact, or information that the department is treating as sealed will impact our ability to reach a determination on the merits of the case.
Well, can I just say in closing that I hope that for future reference that and going along with the newfound powers of the CCRB, that you start to track that that statistic to see how legitimately that impacts the outcome. I hope that's part of the data that you guys track going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I do suspect we have the data. It'll probably take them a while to pull it together, and we can talk about that at a future meeting. But thank you. You hire our next speaker.
Thank you so much, Devers. Next, we'll be hearing from Melanie Wilkerson, Youth Justice Coordinator at the Staten Island Justice Center.
The speaker can go ahead. Melody?
Okay. Can you all hear me now?
Yes, we can.
All right. And can you see me now?
Yes, we can.
All right. This is my first time using WebEx, forgive me.
No worries.
And this is also my first time attending this meeting, so I'm really glad to be here and be learning a lot with you all. And also, on behalf of my agency, I prepared a statement for the board tonight, really with some general reflections that we've had at our agency, and hopefully can maybe inspire any further dialogue.
Sure.
So as a provider working at the Staten Island Justice Center, which is actually part of a larger agency, the Center for Court Innovation, I work in the Youth Programs Department, and my work particularly is in support of court-involved young people in our Alternative to Detention program, which has allowed me to learn a lot from those young people's direct experiences going through the justice system. I also operate the Youth Impact Program, which was formerly known as Youth Court, which connected our young people with a number of juvenile justice partners and even hosted police community dialogues. And so really what I wanted to bring here as a point of reflection for this evening is that I'm coming to this discussion shaping my perspective based on the experiences of my young people. And CCRB has run workshops educating our young people on the work they do, which I would say has been generally very well received and informative. And my young people kind of regularly share with me that they feel if they saw any more visibility where CCRB staff were more frequently tabling in public areas or offering education in schools, it would be really helpful. And again, referring to my experience as a provider, I feel that young people really need this information as much as the adults, as they have developed opinions on the police and justice systems. And we also, as a center, work with young people who experience direct contact with officers in the justice system. And, you know, basically with some further reflection, I think the CCRB has, at least from the outside looking in, continue to struggle with a lack of image and image problem. So to quote my own words here to share with you all, as a community-facing resource, we share with our young people and clients at the center that the CCRB exists as an avenue of support when applicable in police-civilian incidents. And when I bring it up, most people are still not aware that the CCRB exists. There continues to be doubt if the CCRB is well positioned to assist with holding officers accountable. And specifically on Staten Island, and as a native Staten Island myself, there are many high-profile incidents or even lesser known here on the island where officers have not been held accountable on whatever spectrum of what accountability looks like, particularly towards people of color, that has led to further distrust in the system. And so I really wanted to frame my statement on behalf of my agency to also iterate that I feel the CCRB needs to continue providing increased transparency around your investigatory and disciplinary processes when officers, complaint for officers have been made. So that's what I wanted to share with you all tonight. I would hope that could be dialogued anymore.
Sure, thank you. And just a few quick comments. First, getting the message out about the CCRB is something that we continuously try to do. I would agree with you. We're not as known throughout the city as we should be as an agency for people to engage when they have complaints about interactions with members of the NYPD. And so we have a strong but small outreach team that's doing a lot of work. As you said, they've done trainings with your organization. It would be nicer for us, or better and more effective for us to be in schools and places like that. You know, we'll keep pushing the City Council for more resources so that we can do more. I would also say that we have a Youth Advisory Council that's going to be doing more and more outreach to young people. There's a PSA that they've done that's on the website and that has been promoted by the Mayor's Young Men's Initiative, and as a way of trying to reach more young people and let them know about CCRB. So we clearly have, still a good deal of work to do to make the CCRB a household name in the city of New York. But we're committed to that. We're also very committed to working with public officials to strengthen the agency. I think we've done a lot over the last 4 years to make the agency even more effective. There's some other things we want to try to do to continue that. But we appreciate your work, appreciate what you do with young people in Staten Island, and I want to thank you for your time. But let me see if any of the other board members or staff have comments or questions. All right, then thank you, Melanie. We really appreciate you, and we will continue to be engaged with you in the work that you do. Thank you. Yahira, for our next speaker.
Thank you so much. Next, we'll be hearing from Kevin Cruz again. He's a Nitro resident on Staten Island. Kevin?
Hello?
Yes, please go ahead.
How you guys doing again? And all right, so I'm from the Staten Island neighborhood. I grew up in New Brighton, and I also grew up in Brooklyn, and I've been around all the neighborhoods. And honestly, the only thing I could really say right now is cops. You see police everywhere in our neighborhoods as if they're a part of our community, but they aren't actually a part of our community. They don't get out their car, they don't conversate with us, they don't talk to us, they don't ask us how they want. Like they're there every day, they're there all day, they bother people, they get out their car, they go in our stores, as if they're part of us, but they're not really a part of us. And it starts with the young kids. As I was growing up, they never did stuff like that. You know what I mean? When I was a kid, I've been arrested several different times on bogus charges that never really ever made any sense. And you know what I mean? I don't think cops really have the empathy and care enough to really sit there and think about the things that they're doing to these children. And yeah, honestly, I just feel like they need to be more a part of our community. If they're going to be in our communities all the time, if they're going to be there as much as we are, they need to be more a part of it. And honestly, that's all I really had to say right now at this moment. So I appreciate you guys for allowing me to speak and giving me the chance. And
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Do any of the board members have any questions, comments for Kevin? All right. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Thank you, Kevin. Next, we'll be hearing from Gabriella Herbst from Staten Island.
Speaker can go ahead. Gabriella. All
Hi,
right.
can you guys hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so I'm Gabriella. I'm from Staten Island. I work at the Staten Island Justice Center with Melanie. And I just had a question for the board. My question is, how does the CCRB ensure that any person that goes through the process of making a complaint feel respected and that the process was fair? And also, how does the CCRB ensure the same for the police officers?
That's a very good question. I've talked a lot tonight. Do any of my fellow board members want to respond to the speaker? All right.
I can, Fred, if you like.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
So I think, as a staff, we try and treat people with respect and get back to them quickly when they reach out to us. It is an aspiration. There are times when people are not satisfied with their treatment by the board, and we try and by the staff, and we try and talk to them and improve on our performance. And it is difficult because when people come to the agency, they want their case to be substantiated, and so it often leads to anger and frustration when their cases are not substantiated. And in the same vein with police officers, we strive to treat them with respect and professionalism, but they are sometimes frustrated at the mere act of being questioned on their behavior. So it is a tough road to balance, but our staff does a very good job of being impartial and unbiased and listening to the people who they're speaking to, asking good questions, getting the answers that the board needs to make determinations, and gathering the evidence and presenting it in ways so that the board can make conclusions on whether or not misconduct occurred, and if it did occur, the appropriate discipline that should be given to the member of the NYPD.
Thank you, John. Any other comments or questions from any of the board members? Any response?
Mr. Chair?
Sure. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mike.
No, I just wanted to add, and then I'll definitely allow Mr. Joseph to go, since this is his borough that we're touching on. But I just wanted to share that in our reports, we do, if we read them, we do see that the investigators really are sensitive to the particular identities and sort of how the complainant, victim identifies themselves, how they want to be referred to. So I think there is a level of sensitivity that our investigators try to present during their interviews that are reflected in their closing reports. And I do also see that the same is presented on behalf of the officers to try to present an unbiased position. So this way we are able to evaluate as fairly as possible. And Mr. Joseph now.
You pretty much said what I was going to say, and Chair Davey also said what I was going to say, is that we're in a difficult, and John, we're in a difficult position. We have to follow the evidence. We have to be unbiased. And many times that doesn't, neither side is satisfied with where the evidence leads us, or the lack of evidence, where we can't prove it one way or another. And it's difficult. So we really do try to be very sensitive to that when we present this information to the officers involved as well as the civilians.
Mr. Chair, there was one other piece of answer that I left out, and that is approximately 3.5 years ago, the agency embarked on the program of adding sexual misconduct to the board's jurisdiction. And as a result, the board, the staff started working with FEDI on trauma-informed interviewing skills. And I think we've managed to incorporate a lot of those skills in the training we've given our investigators, and we're continuing to send people to those trainings. And I believe those listening skills make our investigators better interviewers, both for when they're interviewing civilians and members of service.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you. Ms. Bond, did I see your hand?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one quick thing, which is that I think the agency offers another avenue for both officers and complainants to have their complaints resolved, and I think it's an important option, which is mediation. So I think that not every complainant wants to simply file a complaint and hear back at the end sort of how the case was decided, and I think mediation is a great opportunity for complainants and for officers to be able to engage in a more meaningful way and come to a resolution that does not necessarily just result in discipline, but in I think a better understanding between the parties as to what happened and what the concerns were. So I would just flag that, I think, as another way that the agency, I think, tries to balance all of the interests and the concerns of the folks we deal with.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? All right. Well, we're going to go to that concludes comments from community groups. We're going to go to the public comments section of the meeting. And if you'd like to make a public comment, please use the raise your hand feature. And then we will go down the list. We remind all of you, please keep your comments to 2 minutes. We'll try to time that. And I'm going to ask Yahira if she will call on the first speaker for the public.
Thank you, Chair. We'll first be hearing from Jordan Woke.
Good evening.
Good evening.
To the woman who just asked the question about are people satisfied, I'm a member of the public and I've been attending CCRB meetings for quite a while. And it started because I was attending meetings with the community in the West Broadway part of Manhattan, hearing complaints. And then once I asked the woman, well, why don't you take your complaint to the CCRB? And the response was, why bother? And so this has brought me here to try to learn about what's going on. But this evening, when you were going through the data, you showed a value which was complainant was uncooperative or non-responsive, something like that. For a long time, I've been aware that unsubstantiated included those cases where the complainant maybe just contacted the board once and never contacted again or didn't respond. And I think that that's an important statistic which should be elevated, because unsubstantiated includes when the complainant is uncooperative. And I think that that should be made visible much higher up rather than just being, we couldn't identify the member of service. So I liked seeing that in the data, and I would suggest considering it, moving it up so that it's more visible in the summaries. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone have any comments on Mr. Wilkes' question? All right. Thank you, Jordan. Yahira, next speaker, please.
Thank you, Jordan. Next, we'll be hearing from Jen Vine Wong, followed by Eric Omansky.
Hi, thank you. First, I wanted to commend the CCRB on the recent release of your database. It's a great tool for the public. It's so important for the public to have access to this database, and it's really a good faith show of the CCRB's commitment to transparency with respect to police misconduct and accountability. I wanted to address something that Fred Davey had mentioned earlier, that Chair Davey had mentioned earlier, with respect to basically NYPD obstructing CCRB investigations. And I believe that it was with respect to the sealing statutes and the department's interpretation of those sealing statutes negatively impacting the CCRB ability to investigate. I was wondering if anyone would be able to elaborate a little bit more on specifically how the NYPD has utilized these sealing statutes and their interpretation of it to obstruct CCRB investigations, what the CCRB has done so far to combat it, and to talk a little bit about what the public can do to support an end to this kind of NYPD obstruction. And related to that, a little bit more broadly, whether or not there could be a dialogue that could start about how the extent of which NYPD obstruction of CCRB investigations plays into the ability of CCRB to substantiate and fully investigate allegations of misconduct.
So John, let me just make a general comment, and then John, I'll ask you to comment more specifically on the speaker's questions, and then we can see if any of the board members want to comment as well. The general comment is that we work with the NYPD every day on scores, if not hundreds of cases. And we're working hard, and we think there are areas, as I said in my remarks, where there are areas of improved cooperation and sharing of information, evidence, and other things that the agency needs to do its job and to do it well. But this is a particular area that is creating issues for the agency and its ability to do its work. And we're pleased to see that the mayor, in addition to CCRB, but the mayor's office is also, the mayor himself has also taken the initiative in his report related to the executive order that the governor issued for all municipalities and other government entities that have police departments to issue a report by April 1 on, broadly speaking, police reform. So we're pleased to see that the mayor's taking the initiative in his report to propose that there be legislation that would allow for the unsealing of documents so that CCRB can pursue its cases. So there is cooperation in many ways from the department. The City Hall has taken the lead to help us address this one, but it is a significant one, and another area that needs to be addressed. So with that, I'll see if John wants to make comments, and then the other board members.
So I think the clearest example of where sealing issue impacts CCRB cases are when incidents happen in holding cells. And there may be other people who are in the holding area who we don't know who they are, but because their cases have been dismissed and sealed, the arrest paperwork and the prisoner movement slips and the logs of who's in the precinct will be redacted so that we don't find out who the other people in the cell are. And then going forward as part of the Jenkins plan, as it will call on us to investigate profiling, where in most cases right now where we have complainant, we can get waivers and affidavits that will allow us to get access to records. But when we're looking at incidents that are related to the incident that we're getting a complaint about but aren't directly related to those cases, there's no way to get the affidavit that would let us unseal the case. And so unless we get this relief in Albany, it makes investigating profile extremely difficult for the agency.
Thank you, John. Anybody else want to comment on this issue?
I'll comment. And I haven't studied this issue deeply enough to have real wisdom about it. But I do know when I've talked to the police department, they feel that releasing some of the things that requested would be a violation of the law. Now, people in CCRB, also experienced attorneys, I believe, disagree and say it's not. So, I mean, this is the quagmire of having two groups of people of good faith honestly having a different legal opinion. Certainly, if a piece of legislation passes, that I believe resolves the issue.
Thank you, Mr. Dwyer. Anyone else?
Thank you for those answers. Would the board or would anyone else be able to address any other ways or the extent to which NYPD may engage in other actions that obstruct CCRB independent investigations? For example, I believe this was an issue over the summer with some of the protest cases, had to do with the delay of producing body-worn camera or not showing up, which I believe they have now, but at the time, I believe it was over the summer, they were, officers were not showing up for interviews in a timely fashion, whether or not those issues are other issues of NYPD obstruction has been persisting.
I would say that those issues around body-worn camera footage in terms of access to it as reported by the staff have been resolved, although I do want to reiterate for you and the public that CCRB continues to believe that unfettered access, direct access to body-worn camera footage is the best way to go, and we'll continue to advocate for that. As for the interviews, those are going forward. So I think we've made great progress since those protests this summer. There's always more progress to be made. And any place that we see that there's an obstacle to the agency being able to pursue and fulfill its mission, please rest assured that we're going to address it and make it public and do so in a way that it gets addressed.
Thank you, Chair David.
Thank you. Yahira, next speaker, please.
Next, we'll be hearing from Eric Omansky, followed by John Toffel.
Thanks very much. So I'm a journalist at ProPublica, and I just published a story this morning on some of these issues actually involving access, particularly with regard to the investigations into NYPD abuse of protesters last summer. And I asked the CCRB for any statistics on progress into those investigations. And most fundamentally, how many officers have been charged with misconduct. The CCRB has declined to offer any figures on that. So no figures, put individual cases aside, no overarching figures on number of cases open, number of cases closed, number of cases that have, in which officers have been charged. And my question simply is why? I understand and I reflected in the story that you guys noted you would do so once investigations are closed, and lawsuits about the protests are over. But can you explain to me and everyone why the need to wait for that is? It could be a significant amount of time. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. So let me just make a comment, and then again, I'll turn to John and to the board members. That information will be made available. We just want to make sure that we do it well and do it right and not rush to get it out there. The cases have to be closed, and then we'll make, as we have done, as you've seen, with in about 300,000 incidences that were downloaded prior to the stay being issued around 50A, and then I think another 83,000 or so since the stay has been lifted or on the database, and we'll continue to make that information available. We just want to do it right and do it well, and not rush to get information out there in a way that's not going to be helpful to this process. There'll also be a full report on what the agency has learned on the back end of this. But it's still going to take a little bit of time. It's not, it won't happen tomorrow because we want to be deliberate and smart about this and make sure that we deliver really sort of sound information to the public. And I can understand the desire to know more and to know it now. And you will know it. You will know it in as much detail as the law allows us to make public. But we're going to be careful about how we do it. So let me see if Ms. Darsh wants to make a comment, and then I'll see if my fellow board members want to have a comment. John?
I'm good, John.
I'm sorry?
I'm good, Mr. Chair.
Sure. Anyone else?
I would just say I think it's an important issue that obviously is important to the public, and I do think that we should make every effort to provide interim reports on this to the extent that we can, and can do it in a way that is thorough and accurate.
Thank you, Ms. Irish. Anybody else? Anyone else on the board? All right. So thank you, Speaker. And there will be information made public as soon as we have concluded that we've done our best to ensure that we're getting the best information we can to the public. But you will get it. That's it. Yahira, next speaker, please.
Next, we'll be hearing from John Toffel, followed by Jessica Epstein.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so I just wanted to follow up on what Mr. Umansky raised in the ProPublica report today. I have two questions that thankfully do not involve any sort of investigatory details or any substance of an investigation, but are rather internal issues, so hopefully can be addressed right now. My first question is that back in October, head of investigations Dane Buchanan asked to interview Chief of the Department Monahan when he had a complaint filed against him. This was in October. He asked Executive Director Darche if he should go ahead and schedule this. Executive Director Darche said that he would follow up on it himself. We now find out that Chief Monahan was not scheduled for an interview until this month, after he announced his retirement and after Bill de Blasio has already appointed him to a new position. So this was a gap of about 4 months from when he first was interviewed, and Mr. Buchanan kept following up to try to schedule this to no avail. So why did Mr. Darche delay this for so many months until after Monahan could not be disciplined because he has announced his retirement? Second, why was Nicole Napolitano barred from asking the NYPD about their policies for the retention of body-worn camera footage from the recent protests? That's also another disturbing claim made in today's ProPublica article. I think just generally speaking, there have been 750 complaints made to the CCRB. These protests and the police response to them were the biggest news story concerning the NYPD in the last year. It was brutal. And the CCRB on this has been nowhere to be found. So that indicates a reason why the public does not have faith in this organization. So I'd like Mr. Darche to respond to those issues specifically. Thank you.
Thank you. And let me speak to them first and see if, and then we can see if John wants to respond. First, let me just say again, the public will get the information. I can understand the desire to have it now, but it will come. And to Ms. Irish's point, if there's a way to do interim reports on cases that have been closed, that will happen. Second point, I just want to say I have asked directly, was the interviewing of Chief Monahan delayed for any purpose other than one that had to do with the internal processes that that pertain to that investigation or those investigations related to him? I asked it point blank, and I was told no, it was not delayed for any other reason but that. So I don't want the public to think that somehow Chief Monahan's investigation was delayed so that he could have time to retire and no longer be subject to discipline. That was not the case here, and he actually has been interviewed. And then as for the personnel issue, since there is current outstanding litigation surrounding that, I'm going to encourage no comment on that. But let me turn it over to Mr. Dodge.
I think to get into the internal mechanisms, how it worked, Mr. Chair, we'd have to get into the personnel, the litigation. So I think we need to leave it at your statement.
Sure. Thank you. Any other comments from any other board members? Thanks. Again, I just want to say there's going to be a full reporting of this. You're going to have all the information. I mean, we wouldn't have pushed as hard as we did around 50A, only to say now we're not going to share information. That's going to happen, but it's going to be done in a way that's responsible so that, like the information you have now, 320,000 on the first release, 83,000 on the second release, it'll be solid information that you can depend on. You will get it. Yahira, for our next speaker.
Next, we'll be hearing from Jessica Epting.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm really thankful to be in this meeting, mostly just because it's a first step for myself to finally get some information from the CCRB, and I would like to echo the previous caller who said that the reason that the public doesn't feel like they can trust the whole process with CCRB and in turn the NYPD in general is because it doesn't seem like there's a lot of answers that are given. And I keep hearing like it will come. So I'm curious, when it comes, this report that we're talking about, how will it be delivered to the public? I've never even heard of CCRB meetings before, which brings me to another question. So the questions are kind of around the public's perception of CCRB, the public's information about CCRB, and how the information is being delivered, and if it's effective. In my opinion, at this point, it's not, because again, I've been looking into all of these situations for months and have never even heard about a meeting. Tonight's meeting I see is primarily about Staten Island. I live in the Bronx. I would be quite curious to see all of the reports for the Bronx, as well as just hearing from you guys about how we're going to change the public's perception of an agency that's saying like, we will give you the information, but on our terms and when we feel comfortable, and when it's in due process, and we're sure that there was no other reason why Monahan wasn't interviewed. It just doesn't feel very believable, and it doesn't incite much trust in an agency that we're supposed to trust to investigate.
Thank you, Speaker. Any comments on the speaker's comments? All right, Yahira, our next speaker.
Next, we'll be hearing from John Sonda.
When was the 2019 annual report issued?
You can go on the website and find that.
There was no press release.
Do you have another point to make, Mr. Sonda?
There was no press release, so I can't find it on the website.
Isn't the case that all of our annual reports on the website?
Yes, but the date of the annual report when it was issued is not on the website.
So do you have another point to make, Mr. Sonda?
Do you know when it was issued?
I think you can go to the website and find that report fairly easily.
Who Whose decision was it to not issue a press release?
Mr. Sanda, you show up at a lot of meetings, a lot of people who are giving their time to this. You got bones to pick with the agency, we understand that. But I'll tell you, like I told you before,
I'm reclaiming
this is not the way.
my time, please. I'm reclaiming my time.
This is not the way to do it. You ask a question, I'm giving you an answer. That's part of your time.
Yes, I asked it a minute ago and I still haven't gotten an answer to it.
And the report that you want is on the website.
On April 12, 2018, the CCRB issued a press release announcing that it had released its 2017 annual report. The CCRB released the 2019 annual report in December 2020. Is that correct?
It's on the website.
Okay. Who is responsible at the CCRB for compiling the data that is presented in the annual report?
There's a policy department.
And why did the 2019 annual report take approximately 8 months longer to issue than it did just 2 years earlier?
I don't know the answer to that, but we can.
Who would have the answer to that?
We will get it for you.
And how will I be provided with that answer?
Let me talk to the staff and we'll get back to you.
Executive Director Dosh, at a prior board meeting, you stated we are in the process of changing our disposition letters. When did this process begin?
Mr. Sanda, your time is up. If you want to submit your questions in writing, I invite you to do that. Thank you. Are there more speakers, Shahara?
That concludes our public comment portion.
Thank you. Is there any old business to come before the board? Is there any new business to come before the board? Is there a motion to adjourn to executive session?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
Aye.
The ayes have it. We will executive session. Thank you. Thanks to the public. Thanks for everybody for coming out. Appreciate your interest, your questions, and we will continue to provide you as much information as we possibly can about the CCRB and the work that we do here. Thank you all.